So there's this country called Germany, and in the span of like 30 years, they decided to start 2 world wars. 2 whole wars against everyone. And spoiler alert, they lost both times. But losing the second one, that came with a price tag. $300 billion. That's more money than you'll ever see, your kids will ever see, or your kids' kids will ever see. So how do you go from, I'm gonna rule the world, to, can someone please loan me a banana? First, some context. After World War I, Germany got absolutely wrecked. They lost a huge chunk of territory, they lost their colonies, they lost their military, and they had to sign the Treaty of Versailles, which was basically Europe's way of saying, you started this mess, now pay us forever. Reparations, massive debt, crushing hyperinflation. At one point in the early 1920s, it took a literal wheelbarrow full of cash just to buy a loaf of bread. People were using banknotes as wallpaper because it was cheaper than actual wallpaper. The German mark became so worthless that kids were building blocks out of stacks of money. Not great, Bob, not great. The economy was in shambles. Unemployment was through the roof. People were angry, desperate, and looking for someone to blame. And that's when things got really dark. So along comes this guy in the 1930s who says, hey, what if we just took over Europe again? But like, better this time. We'll rebuild the military, ignore all those pesky treaties, and show everyone who's boss. And somehow, enough people were like, yeah, okay, sounds good. Spoiler, it was not good. So, Germany starts building. And I mean really building. Tanks, planes, submarines, battleships, rockets, the whole war machine. And all of this costs money. Lots and lots of money. Between 1939 and 1945, Germany spent an estimated $270 billion just on the war effort. That's about $4 trillion in today's money. To put that in perspective, that's enough to buy every single iPhone ever made, with enough left over to buy Apple the company. Germany didn't actually have that kind of money. Well, first they squeezed their own population, massive taxation, forced labor, seizing property from anyone they deemed undesirable, which is a polite way of saying they committed atrocities and stole everything that wasn't nailed down. Then they started conquering other countries and just taking their stuff. Gold reserves from national banks, industrial equipment from factories, food from farms, artwork from museums. France alone had billions in resources extracted. Poland, Belgium, the Netherlands, Norway. Basically, if Germany occupied your country, they looted it. War crimes? Check. Economic crimes? Also check. Vibes? Absolutely horrible. And for 6 solid years, they just kept fighting. But here's the fundamental problem with war, especially total war. Everything gets destroyed. Cities bombed into rubble. Factories targeted and demolished. Infrastructure? What infrastructure? The Allied bombing campaign was relentless. By 1945, major German cities like Dresden, Hamburg, and Berlin were basically just piles of bricks with street signs. Industrial production ground to a halt. The railways that moved goods and troops bombed into twisted metal. The bridges that connected cities blown up. The power plants gone. By the time Germany surrendered in May 1945, their industrial production had dropped by 65% compared to 1939. 65%. Their coal mines were flooded. Their oil refineries were craters. Their steel mills were silent. The country was basically one giant smoking crater with a flag sticking out of it. And that's just the physical destruction. We haven't even talked about the human cost yet. So Germany loses, again. And the Allies, the United States, the Soviet Union, Britain, and France, show up and say, yeah, so about all that destruction you caused across Europe, reparations. Round 2, Electric Boogaloo. At the Potsdam Conference in the summer of 1945, the Allies sat down and decided how Germany was going to pay for what they'd done. But this time, they learned from World War I. They didn't want to just demand cash payments that would cripple Germany's economy again and create another angry dictatorship 20 years later. So instead, they wanted physical assets, real stuff they could use to rebuild their own countries, factories, machinery, industrial equipment, patents and scientific research, coal, steel, entire production facilities. The Soviets were especially aggressive about this. They'd lost 27 million people in the war. Their country was devastated, and they wanted payback. Soviet forces systematically dismantled German factories, piece by piece, loaded them onto trains, and shipped them back to Russia. The Soviets took an estimated $10 to $15 billion worth of industrial equipment. That's not counting the forced labor, the confiscated patents, or the scientists they kidnapped to work on Soviet projects. Imagine going to work one day at a factory, and your boss is like, "Yeah, so the entire building is being disassembled and moved to Siberia. You're welcome to come along, but it's not really optional." About 25% of Germany's total industrial capacity just vanished. Gone. Poof. Auf Wiedersehen. And that's just what the Soviets took. The Western Allies also grabbed their share, though they were slightly less aggressive about it. The Americans and British focused more on intellectual property. German scientists, engineers, and their research became Allied property. Operation Paperclip brought Nazi rocket scientists to America to help build NASA's space program. Even the Nazis' war crimes turned into bargaining chips for scientific knowledge. Oh, and just to make things extra spicy, they split the country in half. East Germany, West Germany. One's communist, one's capitalist. Both are broke, and they're separated by a giant, heavily armed border that would eventually become the Berlin Wall. So now rebuilding costs double. You've got two separate governments, two separate economies, two separate currencies, two separate everything. It's like trying to renovate a house while it's on fire, and also haunted. And also your house is now two houses that hate each other. But wait! There's more, because the economic damage didn't stop in 1945. Let's talk about the human cost. About 7 million German civilians and soldiers died in the war. 7 million people. That's 7 million workers, farmers, engineers, doctors, teachers, just gone. The labor force was absolutely decimated. And the survivors? Many were wounded, traumatized, or displaced. Millions of refugees flooded into what was left of Germany from territories that were now part of Poland or the Soviet Union. So now Germany has to pay for war pensions for wounded veterans and widows, healthcare for the injured, rebuilding homes, feeding and housing millions of refugees. The social costs alone were in the tens of billions of dollars. Then there's denazification. The Allies had to completely rebuild German society from the ground up, re-educate the population, purge Nazi officials from government positions, rewrite textbooks, rebuild legal systems, hold war crimes trials. That's not cheap, or fast, or easy. And don't forget, East Germany was basically a Soviet satellite state for the next 45 years. While West Germany got the Marshall Plan, billions in American aid to rebuild and become a capitalist showcase, East Germany got Soviet-style central planning and economic stagnation. West Germany rebuilt fast. By the 1960s, they were experiencing the Wirtschaftswunder, the economic miracle. They became one of the richest countries in Europe. East Germany, not so much. They didn't reunify until 1990, and even today, there's still an economic gap between the former East and West. All right, let's add up this catastrophic mess. Direct military spending during the war, $270 billion. Reparations and seized industrial assets, $20 billion. Physical destruction of infrastructure and cities, $50 billion. Human and social costs, pensions, healthcare, refugee support, $30 billion plus. Historians estimate the total economic hit at somewhere between $300 and $400 billion in 1940s money. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $4 to $5 trillion today. To put that in perspective, that's more than Germany's entire GDP for 3 years. It's more than the cost of the Apollo space program. It's more than the Manhattan Project. It's more than most countries' entire national debts. It's absolutely bonkers. Now, credit where credit's due. West Germany bounced back incredibly hard. Thanks to the Marshall Plan, smart economic policies, hard work, and a little bit of Cold War competition, they became an economic powerhouse by the 1960s. Pretty impressive for a country that was literally a pile of rubble 20 years earlier. Oh, and here's a fun fact. Germany didn't finish paying off their World War I debt until October 2010. That's 92 years of payments. Nearly a century. Imagine your great-great-grandkids still paying off your credit card bill from 1918. So yeah, World War II cost Germany about $300 billion. But the real cost? Millions of lives lost. Decades of division, generations of trauma, a permanent scar on human history, and a really awkward conversation at every European summit for the next 80 years. Moral of the story? Turns out, conquering the world comes with some serious hidden fees. There's the everything's on fire fee, the we lost, so now we owe everyone fee, the our country got sliced like pizza fee, and the we're still apologizing 80 years later fee. So maybe, just maybe, don't start 2 world wars. Anyway, hit subscribe or I'll explain the Treaty of Versailles next. And trust me, that one's way more depressing. Peace out, literally.